I tried to play that as a little holiday greeting on the channel, I think 2 years ago. And I was using the SG straight into a little Marshall 18 water. And YouTube blocked it because it sounded just like the record. So I figured I'd try it with acoustic instead. Happy Crimble to everyone from me and Slade. Good to see everyone. Sorry about the confusion. The last stream, at the end of it, I said I was going to be doing a stream this past weekend because I got my dates wrong, and we were up in the land of cold and snow up in Keokuk, Iowa last Saturday. It was 3 degrees that Saturday. I did a 3-hour photo walk out in the cold because I'm an idiot. But it was a beautiful day, and there were hundreds of bald eagles everywhere. And I had to go out and shoot bald eagles because you don't get a chance to do that very often. And I didn't have a long telephoto lens, but I got some good ones anyway. Anyway, let me put on the clarity so maybe you won't hear the neighbor's leaf blower as much. And let's get started with everyone's questions and comments. And I appreciate everyone saying hey to me. If I don't say hey specifically to you, that does not mean that I don't care. I just want to make sure I get through all the questions. Thank you, Raromu. I guess that's how you say that. I appreciate that very much. And his question, or her question, is, I recently built a Trainwreck Express clone, installed a post-phase inverter master volume. Good. Got a problem where even with the amp gain volume at 0, if I increase the master volume at some point, almost max out, the amp oscillates. Well, did it work before you installed the master volume? And which phase inverter, post-phase inverter master volume did you do? Did you do the Larmar or did you do a crossline? If you did the Larmar, you might have reversed your grids. Because it's really easy to get confused. That's why I use different colors for the right and left output of the phase inverter. If you get those reversed, you could have oscillation. So the master volume should not be the root cause of oscillation, but you may have your positive, instead of having negative feedback, having positive feedback. That's very common. So I would first make sure that with the negative feedback disconnected, does your amp still oscillate? If your negative feedback disconnects and your oscillation goes away, you've probably reversed the wires to or from the master volume pot, which would give you crisscross grids, if that makes sense. Put it down in the comments now what you've got, and if you have the opportunity now during the stream to disconnect that present circuit or negative feedback circuit, that would do the trick. If you have presence, don't disconnect the presence. Disconnect the negative feedback wire. Otherwise, if you disconnect the presence, you might mess up the operation of your phase inverter in general. And yes, we've all done that. Don't feel bad. Hey, Jim Holloway, Merry Christmas to you too. One of the Astrons in your 5E3 has failed. Should you go ahead and replace them all? Absolutely. Astrons are junk. They're absolute garbage. They're old garbage, which is mistaken sometimes for vintage garbage. Vintage does not mean old. Vintage means particularly fine from a certain year. It comes from grapes, where this crop, for whatever reason, the 1888 is better than the 1887, 1889, et cetera, et cetera. So a 59 Bassman is vintage in of itself because that's a particularly great example year of a unique model that only existed for 3 or 4 years. But the yellow Astrons in a 59 Bassman are not why it's vintage, and almost any other film cap will sound better. Same for your 5E3 Deluxe. Let's see. Greg says it's another cold one here. Yeah, it was, like I said, 3 degrees, -8 at night before the wind chill, and I was trudging around in about 5-6 inches of snow, depending on the drifts. It is much better here this weekend. It's in the 40s, quite a bit south of where it was last weekend. And Josh is fixing some furnaces. Well, that'll make everyone else around you's life better, so thank you for doing that for them. Hopefully they pay you for the privilege. Wow, Goody, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I've really come to really love doing photography. It's really renewed a dormant. Um, it sounds pretentious to say passion, but hobby doesn't do it justice. Um, it's real strong interest. Let's just say that. I do know hypnosis. I don't know that any of the photo I've taken rise to the level of hypnosis, but I do try to capture something beyond just a snapshot whenever possible. Thank you. And if you're interested in seeing more of my photography, Goody Guitars, I've got it all up on Flickr under Lyle Caldwell. It's free to look at that stuff. I've got some few things up on, what do you call it, Instagram, but that whole thing has become such a bad joke of ads and garbage. I don't like Instagram at all. Jaguar, yes, please. Hey, Wes, thanks for joining us, man. Glad you made it for however long you've got. My 77 Princeton Reverb is all stock and sounds great. Good. But the volume doesn't really come alive until around 3 on the dial. Is that normal for these or a sign something's off? Well, there are other people out there who say, do you mean it doesn't come alive and that there's nothing until you get to about 3? Or do you mean that it just sounds wimpy below 3? There are different tapers of pots used, number one. So if you have a linear taper, it gets really loud really fast. You have a 10% taper, it takes a while to get loud. If you have a J taper, which is a 20 to 30% taper, which is the preferred value for many of us in an old Fender like a Princeton, that's kind of the sweet spot. But there are a lot of CTS 1 meg audio taper pots that are nominally 10% tapers, where the wiper below about 8:30 o'clock to 0, from 7 o'clock to 8:30, just nothing happens, and all of a sudden the amp comes on and the volume jumps up and it's kind of loud. There's no little gradual change. That's because CTS uses the same track for the wiper to follow inside the little carbon track of the pot. They use the same one for the standard 1 meg pot and for a switched 1 meg pot, where that last section of the tapers of the track is not used because it switches off. And as a result, you do get a lot of amps out there that just go from nothing, nothing, nothing. Oh, it's on. That may be what you're describing. But either way, it's probably just the volume pot. And if you go to tubesandmore.com, which is the version of the distributor, the vendor that you would be able to access, and search for the 1 meg J taper pots. They have some that are CTS. They have some that are branded Fender, the same pot with different bushing lengths. You may just need to stack 2 or 3 tooth washers to make it have the same fit as the other pots. That would solve that issue. Got Victor from Denver and Leo Hearn from Colorado. Do I agree with Phil McKnight that tube amp sales are way down for 2025? Another guy I know is asking me about Phil McKnight, and I have nothing but kind thoughts for Phil, because he's given my channel a shout out when he did not need to do that. He really helped boost people's awareness on my channel. But he follows the industry very closely, and I don't follow the industry. I have certain amounts of time in my life and certain things I am allowed to think about. And when I'm 80 and I look back on my life, I don't want to say, well, I sure did follow the industry. It just doesn't interest me. I'm sure that if he's saying that tube amp sales are down, then he's right. I did think about that. I saw his video about that, and Beato's got our tube amps obsolete. Everyone now has got every few months there's some channel, our tube amps obsolete. Our modeling is modeling perfect. And I think one of the real things that no one's discussing, and Phil, if you see this, or if someone gets this to Rick Beato, I know my buddy Keith Williams is friends with Rick. The big thing that no one's discussing, there might be a reason tube amp sales are down. The market has been flooded with absolutely crap, overpriced tube amps in the last 10 years. There are so many bad tube amps that are put on the market. The Blues Junior everything that says Marshall on it for the past 10 years. And they cost a lot, and they sound bad, and they don't last, and we have so many tubes available to us. The tubes are not going to be an infinite supply. And when you kill a bunch of tubes in a bad amp design, you're wasting what tubes there are. So if you want to hasten the decline of the tube amp industry, by all means, people keep making really crappy, overpriced, unreliable tube amps. And that's what the entire generation will think a tube amp is. Meanwhile, I'm just going to sit here playing this 59 Bassman or that 64 non-reverb. I got a 64 non-reverb and a 64 reverb, deluxe reverb here. I've got that 62 concert, a 58 Bassman. I've got I think a 72 or 74 super reverb there. I've got two deluxe reverb reissues here that have been made to be reliable. They're going to keep going for decades and decades and decades if all the crappy tube amps out there that are on the market haven't used up the available stock of tubes remaining to us. So if the tube amp industry is in decline, they deserve it by and large. And the sad thing is that's going to drag down the Suhrs and the Friedmans and the Germinos, the people who are doing it right. I wish Vox could make their custom series cabinets not weigh so damn much, because they're shooting themselves in the damn foot. A lot of people don't even know how good the Vox AC15 and 30 custom series are, because they ship with crappy tubes and they weigh twice as much as they should. Hey, Brad, thanks for joining us, man. I know it's very early there. Anyway, I don't need to rant too much. So I'm sure that Phil's right, but he looks at all that stuff. He tracks the data. He's got contacts at Sweetwater and other major vendors. So I'm not saying that I'm not interested in what Phil does, but I am personally not interested in tracking the industry. Hey, Bill, do I see any issue jumping the RCA jacks for reverb and tremolo in a 69 deluxe reverb? That way I can operate the trem and reverb from the front of the amp instead of the foot switch. No, you don't need to. If you don't need to do anything with the RCA jack for the reverb, if there's no dummy plug in the back of the reverb RCA jack, the reverb's just on. You can just use the front switch. And similarly, you can make a little. Let's see here. I've got one, but it might be in an amp right now. Let's see. I've got a little dummy RCA jack that I keep handy. It's probably in one of these Fenders around here somewhere. Might be in that Super over there. Anyway, I always have a little RCA jack where I just shunted the tip to the sleeve and I just stick it in the back of an amp to test tremolo. And it's totally safe to leave in there. And then you can just use the intensity. Now, on some amps, it'll reveal that there's a thud in the background that's always there as long as the LFO's working, in which case you need to get that sorted out, and it'll make it seem like you have to have the foot switch, but really, no, you don't. It is totally safe. I thought you meant jumpering them to each other. That would just be bad news. Hey, Sun Tzu, got a Blackstar Artisan 30. Okay, good. I'm glad you liked it. The transformer bracket's been, yeah, when things are really heavy, and they're not shipped well, things like that happen. What's the best way to fix the bent transformer brackets? I saw your hairline comment there, Wes. Sorry, Brad, about Phil. Yes, you guys do share that in common. If I get one of those in, it depends on the amp and how much slack there is in the wire. What I'll often do is I'll remove the 4 screws and the associated nuts, if there are any. Sometimes they just go into chassis. Can't remember the name for the nut that's built into the chassis, but anyway, I would remove it and see if there's enough slack to get like an inch of space beneath the transformer, between the transformer and the chassis, without disconnecting everything else. And I'll just get in there and with some heavy duty kind of plier things and just bend the tabs back until they're more or less laying flat. If necessary, I'll remove it from the amp and then hammer them flat. And if it's kind of brackets that are screwed to the side of the transformer and can be taken apart, you can also take all that apart, clamp them to make them back into L's, and then put it all back together. So I would have to see the transformer. As long as it is physically working and that it is not physically loose. It doesn't hurt if it's at a slight angle. That's not going to throw off the noise fields. But it is nice to have an expensive, pretty thing that is pretty. We'll keep our pretty things pretty. If the badge fell off of the amp, that should be able to put back. That would be illegal and very wrong, and I'm not a very good shot when it comes to things like that, because I'm right-handed but left-eye dominant. So I either have to hold it left-handed, in which case I'm borrowing someone else's shotgun and the shell's ejecting from my eyes and freak me the fuck out, or I'm shooting right-handed, but then I'm always missing because my aim's off. I realized that a long time ago, that it is very difficult to be a crack shot if you're right-handed and left-eye dominant. But with a camera, I shoot very accurately, and you don't have to lead them as much. I may be a libtard, you guys, but I grew up in the South. I know how to shoot. I just choose not to shoot people I disagree with or own a gun anymore. What's my opinion of Fender Bassbreaker 30Rs? I don't know the specifics of the 30R. Basically, what I've picked up, I've not tried any of them. What I've picked up is that people really like the way the Bassbreaker series sounds, but the ones which they're not built well, so hopefully they never need any service. And many of the Bassbreaker models have an auto bias circuit, which fails. And there is no replacement from Fender, and the best solution is to yank all that out and put in a standard bias circuit with like 4 components, because Fender did something really clever and stupid. As you know, I rewatched Spinal Tap, and I saw the Spinal Tap 2 in honor of Mr. Reiner. I don't want to get into all that, but I was devastated. I'm sure many of you were. I'm not even getting into the further devastation wreaked upon us this week, but there's a fine line between clever and stupid is very, very true when it comes to some of Fender's modern circuits. Hey, David S., thank you very much. Well, I hear a noticeable difference reducing the coupling caps from 0.1, 100 nanofarad, to 22 nanofarad, to the EL34s and a JTM45 type circuit. Less blocking distortion. You'll get less blocking distortion and a little bit less low end. You'll still have really full low end with 22 nanofarads. And bass, Marshalls have lots of low end with 22 nanofarads and 220Ks. It's just the 100 nanofarads and 220Ks, you've got like 3 hertz and above is passed. Doesn't all go through the output transformer. It's not like you're hearing stuff there, not like we hear the stuff below 20 hertz anyway. But all that stuff below 20 hertz is sludge, and so you change them to the 22 nanofarads. You have a faster response, a low end which is all within the audible range, and that the output transformer can handle much better. And it's just it's an easier component, easier amp to play, a little bit faster response. Remember, the 100 nanofarads in the JTM45 are just because Jim Marshall was copying the output section of a 58 Bassman. And the 58 Bassman had 100 nanofarads because it was designed to be at least a bass amp. And, the later Fenders also had 100 nanofarads because they just wanted full low range, but people forget that they also were feeding a 500 picofarad cap into the input of the phase inverter. So they're dumping a lot of lows feeding into the phase inverter. If you give it full lows, remember the JTM45 has got a 22 nanofarad cap on the input to the phase inverter, not a 500 picofarad. So there's a lot more lows that are being fed into the phase inverter. You can also decrease the input coupling cap in a JTM45. Try a 10 or 4.7 if you want to tighten it up, but 22 is just fine. What are my thoughts on putting a tube overdrive pedal in front of a tube amp? Hey, the Carlos, if it's a good tube overdrive pedal, no problem at all. Check out the stuff that I did a review of his pedal. I can't remember the name of it. Kingsley. If it's a Kingsley pedal, Kingsley tube overdrive pedals sound fantastic. So a fantastic sounding overdrive pedal into a fantastic sounding amp is going to be great. Doesn't matter which combination of tube and solid state you use. If it's a bad sounding tube overdrive pedal, such as the matchless Dirt Box, which is a hummy, unsafe, ill-designed, noisy nightmare, it's not going to sound good into anything. A used $50 tube screamer is going to sound better than that. So it's not the tube or the solid state which makes the pedal sound good. It's the design and the build. But yeah, the Kingsley stuff is really nice if you want to investigate that kind of stuff. I will take as a personal victory that I won out over college football playoffs, though I hope your team wins, whoever that may be. Yeah, hey Juan in Australia. Thanks, Juan. Yeah, yeah, if your oscillation goes away, if you increase the amount of decrease the amount of negative feedback by increasing the size of that resistor, you're actually decreasing the amount of positive feedback, so the oscillation will go away. Your grids are probably reversed. Either your grids are reversed, or you have the plates, the connections to the plates of your power tubes reversed, or you have the output transformer reversed. If you change any one of those things, you can change the grids, you can change the plates, or you can change the speaker connections. That's trickier if you have a selectable impedance. That should go away, and your feedback will go from positive to negative, and the oscillation should go away. Hey, Mac Flying V, what's the best bet for preamp and 6V6 and 6L6 tubes these days? Thanks. Well, for the average 12AX7, I've really enjoyed the Electro Harmonix 7025, not the 12AX7. The 12AX7 is junk. The 7025 is pretty good for what's on the market today. And if you have a less critical part of the circuit that takes a 12AX7, like you've got say you got a tremolo tube in a V5 and a Fender, or you have a cathode follower stage where the Russian tube, the Electro Harmonix, does not like having the cathode voltage, then I'm a big fan of the good old JJ ECC83. When it comes to 12 ATs, I recommend to my clients the existing new old stock Joint Army and Navy 12AT7s that are still available from the 70s and early 80s. Those are about $30 a tube. And while those last, those are fantastic. A 12AY7, again, there's some new old stock choices, Joint Army Navy surplus stuff that's quite good, though the Electro Harmonix and the JJ are also very good on that. When it comes to the 6V6, I like the Electro Harmonix. When it comes to the 6L6, I like the Tungsol 6L6 GC STR. Those are the ones that I have found hold up the best of what's currently available, and they're not overpriced. Hey, David Allen Herrick, do I have any other improvements for the Mojo Tone British 50 2204 besides the ground scheme that you should be aware of? Well, if you look, I helped a local guy build one. He didn't do he did the 2204, that's right. And the instructions were fine. But the ground scheme, he built it my way instead of the way Mojotone gives you on the kit. And he ended up with a very quiet amp with almost no noise whatsoever unless you pretty much dimed it. So check out all my videos on Marshall grounds and do that. Beyond that, I'm a big fan of removing the 1 nanofarad bright cap across the volume pot on a 2204. There's some other things I do that gets really complicated and kind of beyond the scope of what to talk about in a live stream. But basically, use the ground scheme that I show, build it everything else the way they tell you to build it. And if you find it too tinny, too harsh, take out that bright cap. And if it's still not getting where you want it to be, it may not be the amp for you, or you may just not have had enough time with it to find out what its strengths are. Because at its core, when built correctly with the improved grounds, it's a very good amp. Thanks, Joe. I love those super stickers that I don't get to see. I suppose it's somewhere in the stream, but thank you, Joe, for that. That's very kind of you. Thank you from Actual Ghost 11. Speaking of Spinal Tap, very timely. Just got hold of a 65 AC30 TB. Nice. Looks to be original. Is there anything I should have done as a matter of course for reliability? I intend to use it live. Thanks and have a great Christmas. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Actual. Yeah, I really, if you have an AC30 from 65, you want to make sure all the filter caps are good. You want to make sure that all the hardware is tight. I would bump up the screen grids from 100 ohm to at least 3 watt 470 ohm, though I would go to 1K or 2Ks. And if you increase the screen grids to 1K or 2.2K, somewhere in that range, I would also bump up the screen grids from 1.5Ks to 3Ks. It's for reasons it gets too deep to get into here. It's time constant kind of thing. And just make sure that all the tube sockets are clean, and make sure all the hardware holding transformers is tight, and that all the slider board is tight. And be careful in transit because it is very valuable, but they're very, very good amps. And just make sure that it is biased correctly. If you're in the UK, which you may well be given that you donated in pounds, which I very much appreciate, there are ways to, depending on what your wall voltage is, you're getting, I think you can set the AC30 higher in the UK than the actual wall voltage, which runs things a little bit cooler. Say, I'm trying to remember if it's 245 versus 235. A lot of people run it at 235. You run it at 245, it cools everything off a little bit. Depending on where you are in the UK, and given how valuable that amp is, and you're going to be touring with it, I would highly recommend taking it to a very good tech to have it looked at and have all these things, do a consultation with someone who can say, hey, here's how I would have this run, and if you can provide this consistent power level, voltage level. And I would recommend Chris at Rift Amps, who I believe is in the southeast of the country. It might be in the southwest. And I would recommend Roland Lumby, who's in the Manchester area. But I know the UK is much bigger than just those two areas. And also know that it can be really hard to get from point A to point B in the UK without going through a central major city. So look into that. But both Chris and Roland would take good care of you. And I'm sure there's some other great techs. I just don't know everyone everywhere. Not yet. Hey, Victor 86BT, is it okay to have the HD current run from a stud mount Zener diode through the chassis for 1 inch to the ground terminal, the rest of the B? It's okay. I always find that it's not the best way to do it because that generates an awful lot of heat. And if you really need to drop voltage that much, I would suggest looking into some of the various MOSFET options where the voltage drops to a MOSFET which can be chassis mounted, but it's much more efficient than a old Zener, chassis mounted Zener, and there's a lot less heat involved. But I don't know why you need to drop. You're not really dropping the HD current. You're dropping the HD voltage. I have rarely found that to be the best solution. If you have the wrong power transformer for your needs, you have the wrong power transformer, or you have an amp that is more than you need it to be, but it'd be ideal without any mods for someone else. So you may not have met your Mr. Right yet, so to speak. Yeah, it's all amplified parts now. I think the Tubes and More website still goes there. They had like 4 or 5 different end user marketing things, and they all went to the same website. And then they have CE distribution if they're doing to the businesses like me and Brad and stuff. But it's all the same components. Hey, Green Mystic Surfer. I don't know any techs in the Detroit area. You got a 792203 loud hum, low gain on the low channel. High channel is fine. Well, That's an interesting set of problems to have. Um, you may just have a weak preamp tube in V1. Try that first. Try different 12x7 in V1 and see if that issue goes away, because there's not much. That's about the only difference in a 2203 between the channels like that would affect that. Uh, the second triode, which is actually the first triode of V1, but it's used for the low gain input in a 2203, is bypassed with a 10K. The cathode has a 10K resistor which is not bypassed, so it's real susceptible to heater hum. So you could just have heater hum there. And low gain, that resistor may be acting up, and maybe you've drifted really high, or you could just have a bad triode in that tube, and you may think the high channel is fine, but the high channel is still not as good as it should be. It's just that the signal to noise ratio is different. So you have, say your buzz is here, and your gain level when you're at the normal channel is here, so your buzz is really high compared to that. Your buzz is here, your gain is here with the high gain. You may not notice the buzz as much, but it's still there. And you may not have as much gain as you think, because that second gain stage, if it's weak on the clean channel, the low gain input, it's still going to be weak for the high gain input. You could also just have really dirty contacts or a faulty input jack, though that'd be less likely. But as to techs in the Detroit area, I do not. Maybe Bragg could find someone for you, because he's got access to the list that I have that I can't really do in the middle of a stream. Or you might be able to get in touch, shoot an email to Dave Friedman, who comes from Detroit and probably knows everyone who's there. And not far from, well, he's not, Bruce Egnator's not taking work anymore, I don't think. He's not far from the Detroit area. But if Brad doesn't have someone for you, maybe an email to Dave Friedman saying, hey, I know you're busy, blah, blah, blah. I'm not looking for anything free, but could you recommend a good tech in the Detroit area? Dave knows Detroit, and Dave knows amps. Thanks, Chris Fit. I'm going to put, I'm on Flickr, FLICKR.com, under Lyle Caldwell. There's no charge for it. And these are my photos from last week, out in the cold. I just try to have a little different thing happening there, just to have something happen in the background. But I don't want to make this channel about my photography. Otherwise, it'll be all Voigtlander all the time. Ooh, look at that, look at that. Of course, this autofocus on the FX30, the Sony, this thing can barely autofocus on a still object, and this thing is just, this is the second best autofocus in the world. The little A6700 that Brad's got has got the best autofocus in the world right now. It's amazing what the Sonys can do. But I love the colors that this little thing gets. And the black and white's nice too. Thank you very much, Chris. Hey, there you go. Bernie Greenberg in Detroit, Professional Technical Services. See, Brad and I we have a certain set of skills, and Brad has access to all that stuff while I'm here on the stream. Otherwise, I'd be looking stuff up. Brad, if I ever meet you, the first 3 rounds are on me. And Chris Fit, if you have any photography questions, the last 20 minutes of these things, it's anyone's guess what we'll end up talking about. So we may open the floor up to stuff like that. Working on a 71 Trainer YBA1. Nice. It's starting to oscillate. There are 8 ohm, 350 volt axial caps that are bulging. All I can find is 10 volt, 400 volt, 10 microfarad, 400 volt. Well, let's change the sound. Schematic calls for 8 at 250. No, you're not going to hear any difference between 8 and 10 at all. And as long as the voltage is at least as high as what they want it to be. Is the stream buffering? Is it buffering for anyone else? YouTube says it is excellent. And I'm not seeing any indication of buffering on my end. Brad, leave and come back, but please do come back. Aside from how much use you are to me, I like seeing your comments on things. But back to Tom's question, sorry. Yeah, if you were to go with 350 volt or 400 volt 10 microfarads, it'd be absolutely fine. Yeah, Wes, the Canon R5 is a great camera. It's just ugly as hell. And I respect Canons, and if I were doing wedding photography or wildlife photography or sports photography, I might look into them as an option. But they are, I don't like the melty '90s plastic look that they have, and they're just, I don't know. This is my little poor man's Leica kind of rangefinder S thing. You know, not that my photos are there, but I feel like Cartier-Bresson when I'm walking around with this little thing. Let's see. Oh, don't say Phil McKnight does anything. You don't know Phil. None of us know Phil. From what I've seen, he seems like a really good guy. He's found his niche, and he really does try to show people a lot of little tips for getting ahead in the understanding how gear works and how you do stuff with this and that and make things work together. I have no problems with Phil. There are people whose channels I don't like at all, and I rarely mention them. I try to shine a positive light on those I do like. I have no issue with Phil whatsoever. I do find I don't care as much about his industry following as I do about when he's like, hey, here's how to upgrade your Squire, and you should only upgrade a Squire this much or you're throwing your money away kind of thing. Yeah, as far as the reviewing stuff, you know, there's a lot of people who review products, really new product announcements and new product features as opposed to reviews. But you know, if he wants to talk to me about that, I'll be glad to have that conversation with him. I'm not going to talk out of school here. I don't think he has any bad motives. I think it is just a matter of you got to pay the bills, and everyone else is paying for the bills in crappy ways. I think he's doing it pretty well. And I've seen his do some reviews where he's like, well, I don't like this thing. So, you know, that's a lot more than I can say for some channels. Got any tips for matching tubes without a tester? That's tricky. That's really tricky if you don't have a tester, or you're not in my situation where I have tons of amps, including I have amps that I use, an old amp I use for testing that kind of stuff. Really the best thing is to buy matched tubes from a good vendor that you trust. I would not buy tubes and then try to match them unless you had a tester, a very good tester, and also knew how to test them in an amplifier where if something were to go wrong with the tube, the amplifier itself is protected. So you need to have current limiters, you need to bring things up on voltage, you need to be able to measure all these things. Just buying random sets of tubes on eBay, then trying to match them, you need a good tube tester to do that. And I'm not trying to criticize anyone here for their opinion about me or Phil or anyone out there. You can say anything you want about people. I just don't want, if you want to slam me on my channel, I think that's fine. Slam me away. It's my channel. Slam me. If you want to slam other people on YouTube on my channel, that puts me in a different spot. I hope you can respect that. So if there's someone you really don't like, let's just keep it off my channel and just tell other people with other channels that you do like. That kind of gets to the same point in a nice way. And if you want to slam Phil on Phil's channel, you go right on ahead. Phil's a grown-ass man like I am. So, and we've all been told on a daily basis that we're geniuses and that we're fucking morons and very little in between. And we all know after a certain point that we're way in between. We're way in between. Very few of us are geniuses. I don't think there are any geniuses who are doing guitar channel stuff. And the fucking morons aren't that interesting after a while, so people move on. So now you're stuck here in the middle with me. Basically, if a piece of gear comes out and every guitar channel has that piece of gear on the same day, I don't watch any of those reviews. I may make a mental note that that thing came out on the market, and all the channels that got them 6 months later, I'll check those channels to see if anyone's still using it or talking about it. You know? How much mains capacitance is too much for 50 to 100 watt tube amps in general, be it Fender cleans to high gain designs? A big part of that is whether or not you're using. I see you, Wes. Yeah. A big part of it is if you have tube or solid state rectification. If you have a tube rectifier, there's only so much capacitance that the rectifier tube is capable of handling. If you've got a GZ34, it can handle 60 microfarad, 64 microfarad. You don't want any more than that. If you are Mesa, you can totally disregard that and kill a whole bunch of output rectifier tubes by having 120 microfarad. It just sells more tubes that are branded Mesa. I'll talk shit about Mesa all day long. I just don't want to drag Phil into it because anyway, I've said enough about that. Hey, Phil, if you watch this, good thoughts to you and your family. If you're doing solid state, then too much begins to be a little bit slower to respond because I don't want to get too far into it. They charge and they discharge and they charge and they discharge and the bigger the capacitor it is, the longer it takes to discharge, and a little bit the longer it takes to fill versus a smaller capacitor. And this is really an exaggerated cartoon thing, but in terms of how it responds to energy demands, when you play a big E power chord and then you go chugga 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 chugga. Oh, it's just an air blower for cameras and lenses and things. It's also very handy with the amps. It's shaped like a rocket ship, so if you set it on the table, it stands up and keeps the tip out of dirt. But it's just a little air blower. But it is cool. It's very Buck Rogers. So hopefully that helps. Basically, if a Twin Reverb's got in stock form 35 microfarad for the first stage, even though it's solid state. A lot of Marshalls have 50, some Marshalls have 100. You don't want to go much more than 100, and most amps are fine with 50 because you're going to have more capacitance in the next node. You don't need to put all the capacitance in the first stage because you're going to have a second stage of capacitance and more as it goes. So as long as it's well filtered by the time you get to the preamp, you're fine. What brand of pots do I recommend? It depends on the application. Our Life in Wyoming. I like Alpha. I like the CTS 30% taper stuff for volumes, the J tapers. I like the CTS made Mojo Tone vintage tapers for guitars. I have no problem with Burns pots. I know that Brad uses a lot of Burns pots and is very happy with them. I have not tried some Burns pots because there are certain ranges that are either less available here or more expensive here than they are, I think, where he gets them. I don't have any. I don't. Hold on a second. I kicked someone off my channel. Doop-a-doo. All right. Goodbye. All right. Don't need that. Don't need that at all. I mean, Brad is an asshole, but you don't need to put it in all caps. We're just not going to have that. Hey, Frank's here. I just saw it in passing as I'm scrolling back up to the pots question. What kind of pots do I recommend? So, those are the pots that we usually use. I really like the Alpha pots in general. But for certain things, I like a different taper. CTS, if the 500K and 1 meg audio didn't do that dropout below 830, I might use them more often. But for the guitar stuff, I really like the Mojo Tone vintage tapers, which are made to their spec by CTS, and they don't have that dropout issue. Pretty nice when someone takes a pot shot at a mod. Brad could have banned him himself, but I think Brad would have Brad doesn't want to ban people from my channel, but I don't give a fuck. We're not going to do that shit. Oh man, Metro's shutting up. George is a really nice guy. And yeah, sales are going to be down, tariffs are up, and finance is dictated. Yeah, it is just a recipe for how to kill small businesses. We're not supposed to talk about all that stuff, are we? We're not supposed to talk about all that stuff. Tell you what, I know how much our farm, I live in Memphis. My family's got farms northeastern Arkansas and cotton gins. And I know how much we have made on a typical year before the current economic genius changed the world. And yet, you know, with anything in farming, it fluctuates, but it has never fluctuated down like we have now. Pennies on the dollar. A lot of farmers would be better off just working minimum wage jobs than going out there and working their ass off, which they do. We're supposed to love farmers, but we sure shit on them all the time. And by we, I mean, well, you know what I mean. I'll reach out to George. If George can't keep this going, how can any of us keep going? It's really, really hard for small businesses. And my business is a lot smaller than George's, but then again, I have not invested and put all my capital into production stuff. Hopefully he'll keep making the effects loop kit available, because that's a low cost way for him to make, you know, $2 to $5 here and there. People think things are much more, that we all make much more profit than we do. I do not use treble bleed circuits in my guitars, Bill. I don't like them. They don't sound natural. If what values do I think are the most effective of the ones which suck the least? If you can look this up, the Sir one's not bad, and the Sir implementation is not bad, and the Fralin implementations, not Fralin, sorry, Kinman implementation is not bad. I hate the ones that Seymour Duncan pushes out there, but I don't like treble bleeds. I just wire all guitars to 50s mod, where the tone circuit is attached to the wiper of the volume pot, not to the pickup, which is active, not directly to the selected pickup, but to the wiper of the volume pot. That way, as you turn the volume pot down, you get series resistance between the pickup and the tone circuit, so it loads the pickup less. Let's see. Hey, XLJ. I was here, get it? You were here a few weeks ago. You mentioned you got an OR30 that you love, other than it being outrageously priced. You want my opinion on it. $1,200, I think that's a pretty good price for an OR30. They're good sounding, reliable amps. I've said it again and again. My only problems with Orange are that they used really the cheapest of the cheap pots, and that the shafts are made of what's called pot metal, which is a mixture of cheap metals made from powder, basically. And they're very long, and they're very fragile, and they snap. And when the pot needs to be changed out, the entire board has to be taken out, because the pot is soldered to the board. Some of the pots in those amps are only available from Orange, because they custom ordered certain values that don't exist in any other form. And I also don't like that they use split shaft pots, but they use set screw knobs. And what happens is the set screw compresses the little split shaft knurled shaft of the pot metal, and it breaks inside just from the pressure of the screw. If it doesn't break the pot shaft, then the knob falls off, because the set screw gets loose over time. It's a weird thing that they do. I don't know why they don't just go to push on knobs if they're going to double down on using the set screw split shaft. I'm sorry, the split shaft press on knurled shafts. It's really hard to keep all this stuff straight verbally. Anyway, if they have better quality pots, I would like them more. They have to use the long shafts, because they have a pretty thick front panel. It's really well built. Anyway, I'm glad that you like it. Just be very gentle with it. They do have those nice big handles which do protect the knobs if you let them. What do I know about Vibrolux output transformers? Is it true they really just use the Deluxe Reverb transformer? Is the 35 one that Hammond sells authentic to the original? Well, the Vibrolux was an odd duck. It is not the original is not 35 watts, but the Hammond and the see, I don't know where the Hammond and the Mojotone, the Habor, what they really are inside. The Vibrolux should be a 40-watt amp if it was used with a larger output transformer. Is a pair of 6 L6s, and given the wattage available, the voltage available. But the original Schumacher output transformer, I've been told by Joe, that's Joe's last name, begins with a P. We're both friends with him, Brad. I haven't seen him in a few years. Who used to do obsolete electronics, used to wind output transformer. He told me this, and other people have backed it up, that the transformer used in the Schumacher Vibrolux Reverb and Vibrolux transformer was only a 28-watt transformer, which means that the transformer cannot put out the full swing that the tubes can put out, those voltages. Joe Pampel. And so you get the compression art and kind of a limitation from there. So I don't know whether Hammond and Habor are making an authentic replica of the Schumacher and saying, hey, this is for the 35-watt Vibrolux. Because you know, Brad, peak on a Vibrolux, even with a capped at 28 watts, it's not going to be capped. It's going to be a soft knee. So I don't know if it behaves the same way inside or if it's just a 35-watt transformer that can go even higher than that. Because I've not had to replace the transformer in a Vibrolux yet. I suspect that if they're making a model based on an old Schumacher from a Vibrolux, that they are probably copying it correctly, and they're labeling it 35 watts versus 28 watts because they don't want to scare people off and thinking, well, I don't want a 28 watt amp, I want a 35 watt amp. But you know, it's not like I'm not telling Brad anything he doesn't know. But for the rest of us, a tube limit is what is rated at clean. Transformer's got a little bit more to go. It's not clean at that point. That's part of the whole cool sound of the Vibrolux. It's one of the reasons the Vibrolux is more snarly than a Deluxe Reverb or than a Pro Reverb, which are the more similar, I guess, the closest models to each other to the Vibrolux. If anyone has any information that contradicts what I just said, please put it in the comments below. I'm always trying to learn, but I've been told that by, like I said, Joe Pampel, who used to do obsolete electronics and wound transformers. It was really brilliant when it comes to that. He's now making money on Wall Street instead. He's much smarter than I am. And I've been told that by some other guys who know much more about how the transformers work. I used to be able to call my buddy at Mercury, but sadly, my buddy's no longer there, so I don't have the hotline to the transformer information that I used to have. I don't know anyone in Fort Myers, Florida. Sorry, Fred St. Felix. If Brad has the time, he might be able to find you someone there, but it's hard for us to just recommend amp techs around the world. Yeah, Brad, I told him to disconnect the negative feedback first, but you're absolutely right if he hadn't done that first. He said that the oscillation went away when he increased the resistor in the negative feedback, so that tells me that he's probably getting that. Hey, Antman 5863 saying no buffering here. I think you might be about 7 minutes or so behind, so check your screen. There should be a little live option depending on what device you're viewing this on. Make sure that you're caught up and you're current. I think you're about 7 minutes behind the rest of us, maybe a little bit more. Hey, Bill Morgan, 67 Deluxe Reverb, normal channel treble control does nothing until end of sweep. When it gets darker, if anything, try a jumper switch from cap to pot, measured pot, tried another cap. Any ideas? Well, you either have a bad wire, a bad pot, or a bad cap. If you've tried another cap, it's probably not the cap. I would, let's see, let me think. If there's anything else to think of. Just in case, make sure that your slope resistor is 100K, because you have the 100. If the 100K is gone short, then you're going to be sending so much more signal through the bass and mids that the treble pot won't do as much. You really need to have the slope resistor right. You need to have the pot be the correct 250K J taper. You can use audio or linear. They're going to have different behavior, but J taper 30% is the best. 20% will work, and you need to have a good cap. But you may still have a bad pot even if it measures okay. Hey, Steve Smith in Blytheville. I just went through Blytheville last weekend. Went past it going north, went past it going south. Thank you very much, Steve. We'll be getting together very soon. All right, we're going to take our first intermission because I drank so much coffee this morning. I've got to go to intermission about a minute ahead of normal schedule. So I will see you guys back in 7 minutes, and we'll resume the Saturday fun. How's that for timing? Oh, yeah. Still got it. Let's see. Hey, Jaguar, yes, please. My 77 Princeton has a Celestion G12T75. When he got it, tried a Jensen C10Q and a period correct 74 Oxford. Both sound good, but the Oxford breaks up earlier. Is that normal? Yeah, Oxfords break up a lot. C10Qs are love-hate speaker. And for me, the G12T75 is a hate speaker. There's none of those are my favorite. Period correct is, I'm not a big fan of the old Oxfords. There are a lot of really good sounding speakers to use in a Princeton. I don't think you have any of them in your arsenal there, though. Some people really do love that Jensen. But, that's all subjective. They're all totally safe to use. So I'm not sure how you got a G12T75 in a Princeton and you tried 2 10-inches in the same Princeton unless you changed the baffle. So I'm a bit baffled as well. Hey, Andy Cole, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Drove yourself mad tracking down bad buzz in a JMI AC30. Tried the suggestions in my vids, but finally fixed it by mounting a piece of aluminum off the cut knob between the phase inverter and AC switch. Yeah, it's one of those things where the AC field off the power wires can get picked up at the input to the phase inverter or the output of the grids of the output tubes. Yeah, you can have issues. And people have done brackets with that, and you can also have issues with the input jacks being so close to the output transformer. There are a lot of sources for noise in old JMIs. I have only run into those things like once or twice. It's not that common, but it is a consideration. And it's one of the reasons a lot of amps don't keep the output transformer by the input jacks, because you're putting the input weak signal right by the output strong signal, and you can get some crosstalk there, which makes for less than pleasant things. I'm glad that you found the solution. I wish that Ampeg would implement a similar solution to their standby implementation of the SVT Heritage, which is a very expensive amp to have a rookie mistake in it like that. I'm glad that worked for you. It is not abnormal, but it is not common. One of the issues that you might have is that sometimes if you have a faulty input coupling cap in your phase inverter, because that's a high impedance node, and any issue with that capacitor will make that high impedance node at the input to the phase inverter, which is on both sides of the phase inverter in an AC30, because there's no negative side to it. Very susceptible to any noise fields around there. So it may be that the other solution would have been to change out the 2 input caps, and the stock input cap value, I think, is 47. I'd usually change those to a 22 or even smaller. But if you go too small, like if you go in a basement, did I say earlier that a Fender's got a 500 picofarad? I meant to say 1000 picofarad input coupling cap versus the 22 nanofarad in a Marshall. Sorry, revising what I said earlier in the stream, because I'm just now hearing what I said. But I have found that on some Fender circuits that do use a 500 picofarad input coupling cap, there is buzz in the output. If you change that 500 picofarad to a 1 nanofarad, the buzz goes away because it's about that high impedance node and susceptibility to noise fields to the capacitance. As you increase the capacitance, the noise goes away, but it can also be a sign that you have a capacitor which is not fully functioning. So that could be the other issue that you might want to play around with before you get into random pieces of aluminum strewn across your amp, though you are not the first person to put in little shielding bits inside AC30s. Like I said, the input jacks sometimes need some protection from the signals at the output transformer. Would I ever consider doing a basic walkthrough of wiring up a Strat and wiring up a Les Paul, just explaining the steps for basic wiring schemes or explaining? I don't think so, because I'm not very good at such things. I'm impatient. I have a hard time putting myself in the position of a beginner. I'm just being honest with myself. It's not because I'm inherently great. I'm not very good at that. I have shown myself doing those jobs, and sorry, and I've put up diagrams and very clear photos. But basically, I have to start from the premise that my video is for someone who's already knows how to do it fairly well and has been following Stu Mack and Seymour Duncan diagrams and stuff, but then wants to have a little extra sauce in their arsenal, and so I show some of my extra sauces. But I'm not a good teacher of basics. I don't know that I'm a good teacher of anything. My wife is a professor, and she jokes that I would be either the best teacher one person ever had, or the worst teacher 3,000 students ever had, or possibly both at the same time. So. Hey, Mesa Barbecue. Magnetic Component said not to remove the nuts of the laminations. So Rift leave them yesterday. Has an air gap like yours all has. I've done it both ways. I've removed them and then just immediately clamped it to a chassis, and I've kept them in place. And usually it doesn't seem to make any difference, except in certain amps. Certain transformers rely on that for a ground, and I don't know why it is that it has to have that metal nut there for the ground to be made, when it seems like as long as the nut is contacting the chassis metal from the other side, it would be fine. But I had replaced the transformer in some black-face Fender or silver-face Fender, and I had a buzz, and then I realized, oh, the shielding is not there on the power transformer, and I took the transformer out, put those nuts back on the screws, put it back in place. The buzz went away. Then I screwed from the other side. The buzz stayed gone. I cannot figure out to this day why that is the case. But if you've got a magnetic component speaker and it says to don't remove the nuts, don't remove the nuts. And that little air gap doesn't hurt a thing. My thought would be that it's a simple matter of reducing any leverage, because you're just reducing the length by that, and you're also at the point of contact, you're spreading the load out more. So. Would I accept a deal to map one of my amp designs in order to create a plugin? I don't think I have any amp designs worth doing that to. Every amp that I've designed has been a variation on something that already exists. Sometimes just taking this stuff that people like and saying, all right, let's make a real low noise version of that, and or hey, I've played 57 deluxe reverbs this year. This one sounded the best. I wrote down all the voltages and values and built a deluxe reverb that sounds just like that one. So I have some advantages and the nuances, but it's not like I'm coming up with wholly original designs for anything. But I also think that if I did a wholly original design, that the plugins would not sound like it. The plugins that exist today do not sound like great amps. I did consult with Cliff on a previous version of his Fractal. I think it was when he did the second version. We have common friends, and he called me one day about AC30 oddities, and I discussed some behaviors that the AC30 does that he could take into account with his modeling. I have no idea whether he used any of that information or whether his algorithms and such even takes that into account. But I think of the stuff on the market today, the Fractal is the closest. And in some ways, I think the universal audio stuff is really close in some ways, but they're still just kind of snapshots of some of the stuff an amp does. The Fractal's closer. But if they paid me enough, I'd be glad to tell them anything that made them feel good. Should I eliminate the quick connects on a 57 Tweed Deluxe and solder directly? Benefits? I did it on Deluxe Reverb 65 ratio. I can recommend it. Well, a 57 Tweed Deluxe doesn't have any quick connects. I mean, one of their issues. You should do the heaters. The rest of them, quick connects are fine as long as they're tight and they're clean. There's nothing wrong with a quick connect. except if there's a lot of current. And when there's a lot of current, like there is with heaters, quick connects are insufficient. So yeah, if anyone brought me a Tweed Deluxe build that used quick connects for the heaters, I'd change that. Now, I know that someone's gonna hear that, and then watch my video on the Friedman where I said that their heaters are fine, even though their heaters are using quick connects. They're using very different quick connect styles than the stuff in the reissue Fender. Much heavier duty quick connect with much heavier duty traces and pads involved, and a short path from there to the tube sockets. So it is possible to do quick connects with heaters, but it takes an approach that Fender and most other manufacturers do not use. And the Vox quick connects are quite good on their heaters. Of course, the Vox heaters have a lot less current than stuff with EL34s and 6L6s. And Merry Christmas to you too, Jorge. Feliz Navidad. Hey, that amp guy. Thanks very much for popping in, Frank. I don't think we need to have any random clowns, but I could pop something freaky up on the in the photo gallery, just pop up randomly. I wish I had control over all that kind of stuff while I'm doing this. It'd be great to have little exorcist jump scares and stuff in the background for anyone paying attention. Let's see. Thanks, our Guitar 78. Well, I think I speak for Brad and Doug and everyone else in saying thank you very much for watching. It means a lot to us that people watch and comment and are interested, because otherwise we're just madmen talking to boxes in our rooms. You validate us. You complete me. Let's see. Merry early Christmas. Merry to you too. I live in Europe and can't get me a 70s Twin for $2 like you can in the US. All Fenders are ridiculous over here, but I need them. Also amps under X amount coming back. Well, from what I've seen, the Twins and Supers are the least expensive, at least as far as 70s go, of the amps. So the Princetons and the Deluxes and the Vibroluxes and even the Champs have gone crazy high in price. But I have seen like a 76 Super Reverb for $600-700, Twins for $800, whatever. I don't know if that's the case in Europe, obviously. I've not looked in Europe. People want smaller, lighter amps, and especially as the 70s progressed, the Twins and Supers got even heavier and very and louder. So I don't know what the market is in Europe, but I also know that your Marshalls and Voxes are less expensive than here. As to the amps under X dollar coming back, it's been very difficult to do because the market has been changing so much. And I would do I do a month's worth of research to do the amps under $2,000 kind of thing, get it all set up to do. And then prices would change. And some of the amps that were under 2,000 are now over 2,000. Some of the amps that were under 2,000 are now under 1,000. And I only have so much time. And, you know, if I were doing this about the channel, if my life was this YouTube thing, then I would absolutely do it, whether it was factually or not, because those give me hundreds of thousands of views. And when they are peaking, I make a lot of revenue off of them. But I also make a lot of revenue off of doing the amp work, which is what the channel is an offshoot of. And so I don't need to focus on chasing YouTube goals at the expense of this stuff. This stuff pays more reliably. And it's just, I don't want to give out bad information just for the sake of giving out information. It's difficult. I mean, I can do the best amps under 2,000 videos right now. Buy a good 70s Fender for $800. Get it restored, get all new tubes. Maybe get some new speakers. You might have $1,600 in it. That's one. Go get a Friedman, a Sir, get a Top Hat, get a Germino, a few others I've mentioned. Get a, if it's the levels are suitable, get a Swart. Buy used if you need to. You're done. Maybe wait until you find like an 83 Marshall 2204 that needs a little bit of work and you get a deal on it, and then later you get a cab. That's the other thing. The amps under $2,000, when you have the head cab thing, and you get a head for under $2,000, but a head and a really good cab under $2,000, that's a little bit trickier. And I already kind of crossed over to that a little bit in the amps under $1,000 with some of the Marshalls, like the SLX I recommended. You can get the head under $1,000, but the cab's got to be like $500 or so that works with that. It's tricky. So I'd like to do it, but I cannot get all the information to stay current long enough. And some of the prices that I had in those first two videos have changed. Everything has gone up in the last year for some strange reason. Name one amp which doesn't take pedals well. Well, yeah, okay, I will. A 60s Gibson, like a 66 Gibson anything, doesn't take pedals too well because they've got T-filters and they're really bright. If you have a Fender which has a bright cap, or you have the bright switch on, certain overdrive pedals and distortion pedals, it can be painful. Hey, Hal, yeah, you come on over here. We'll have a casino day. And quick check, that sounds good, man. Give me a call. And I got to get your buddies deluxe to them. JC120s don't take all pedals very well. JC120s take certain pedals really well. If you have a whole bunch of Boss pedals, it's great. You can sound kind of perfect with that. But if you have a pedal which, like a tube screamer into JC120, not a good thing. Half the zhuzh of a tube screamer is it pushes the input of an amp, and the input of a JC120 doesn't like to be pushed at all. But your larger point, Jatuka, is correct. Yeah, man. I'm not shitting on your Canon. I'm just saying I don't like the way that looks. But I've done some challenging low light stuff. Even with this little thing, if I change, I've got, this is my one autofocus. It's a 35 1.4. It gives me 50 mil equivalent. This thing's great until you get to real low light. And I've got a little manual focus 35 for that, f1.4, and this is great for that as well. But I went and as a challenge to myself, I did a low light drag show. Photographed that. I did that with my old ZV-E10, and the lens I'm using here, this fixed f2.8, 18 to 50, and it's fun. I know that your R6 can kill at that kind of stuff, and if I were to take my FX30, I could do some other stuff, but I just don't want to walk around with my FX30 for photos when I got this little joy. Yeah, but I do think that the pedal platform concept of amps is way overhyped. Thank you, Tommy. Or Tom Mediger. Sorry, I saw the Y and I said Tommy. What speaker works best for a 5A9 build after shaving off those bass frequencies with bypass and or coupling cap values? What is a 5E9? I'm trying to remember what the 5E9 is. Or the 5E7 or the 5E3. Oh, it's a Tremolux. What? Just a second. Is it? Okay, it says Tremolux 1x12. I would probably go with a Weber 12F 125. I mean, not 12F, sorry, 12A 125. 12A125 Weber. That's their version of the Chicago Jensen that would have been in there originally, pretty much. And if you want to play around with some of the different variants, like the O, which has a ribbed cone versus a smooth cone or whatever, not cone, but they've got a whole bunch of options. But I'd say the Weber 12A125 would be a really good pairing with the 5E9. As to what speaker works best, that gets in subjective. That'd be like the closest to having a brand new 59 5E9. Hey, William in France. Bonjour. Thank you very much. I did study English, yes. I have no idea how I ended up doing something in a technical field, but it pays better than saying, "Wouldst thou like fries with that?" And Valdi Bergeson here from Iceland. Hello. I have a Vox AC30 CC. It sounds good, but sometimes the volume is not as loud as it was. Somehow the volume is not as loud as it was. Any idea what's going on? Hello. Thank you very much. I guess that even beats Edinburgh as far as being north. There are a couple of things that come to mind. You could have any of your preamp tubes or your output tube, which is beginning to get weak. One of the ways to test that is to try the normal channel versus the clean channel, see if one's louder than the other. If they're both equally limited, it may be the output section or the phase inverter tube. It could also be that you have dirt built up in the effects loop. So turn the effects loop off. Sometimes the effects loop switch gets dirty, in which case that becomes tricky. It's a very easy thing to clean the effects loop jacks. It's a very easy thing to clean the effects loop switch. But sometimes the effects loop in that amp, if the jacks, which are switching jacks, if those become corroded, you lose some level. Or if the switch itself gets corroded, then it doesn't really bypass the effects loop and it kind of gets in an in-between state. You could also be getting it, that amp's old enough that you may be in need of new filter caps, but I would try the other stuff first because it is much less expensive to clean jacks or do things like that. But thank you very much for joining in, and let me know if you try those things. If it still doesn't do it, maybe I can give you some other things to try. Hey, Metal. AO43 Hammond organ chassis build is low volume, voltages are in ballpark, new components rechecked, everything bad, output transformer maybe? I don't know, because all the Hammond organ chassis builds and all the Filmo sound conversions, there are too many variables outside my control. I don't know what it's been built, what it's been changed into. Now, if you built an actual Hammond organ chassis, as opposed to taking a Hammond organ chassis and making a guitar amp out of it, I could tell you what to do. But I don't have enough information to tell you what to look at. Sorry, Metal. Yeah, we're all allowed to talk shit about Brad, except that one guy who is just an asshole. It didn't really offend me that he said Brad's an asshole. It offended me that he did it in all caps. Life is too short. And I'll also judge you all on your punctuation. Would I have any alternatives, equivalents for a 7591 triode pentode tube and an Ampeg G12? No. Well, there are. You can substitute if you needed, if you absolutely had no other option in the world. You would take it to a guy like Brad or myself and have them do some stuff, replacing the tubes with some MOSFETs, some LM201 51s or 201s. I can't remember the model number right now. Brad will correct me, but I don't remember because there are some MOSFETs that work at the same voltages that you have in your amp, which can behave as a triode and behave as a pentode, and you could fit it in the space available. But when I get an amp in that calls for that tube, I find a good working example of that tube. And if the client pays for it, the client pays for it because they bought the amp, they buy the responsibility. It's like when people buy an SVT, hey, I got it for only $1,400. Okay, well then I need $800 worth of tubes for it. There's a certain price for admission with certain amps. Yeah, no one expects the air puffer analogy. Let's see. Magnetone M15 came to my shop. It's a beast, 2 amps in one. Have I worked on one of these before? If so, any tips? Is that the one that's like got the plastic shell case that opens up at the top? I don't recall the M15. Is it 70? You say 7591? 7591 is a beam tetrode, yeah, beam power tube, yeah. But there is a tube that Ampegs use that have a pentode and a triode built into it. Had one of those in that 39 Epiphone a couple months back too. It's hard to keep track of all these things. I'm not familiar with the M15 off the top of my head unless it's that plastic one from the early 70s. Looked like Danny Partridge is going to use it if his custom cutout. They're not very much fun to work on, any of those magnetones. They sound great when they're working. They're not fun to service. Yeah, because it dissipates heat in a different way, and you can heat sink it in a different way. It just doesn't throw off as much as A. It doesn't throw off as much heat. B. You can control it more, fine tune it that more than just a fixed diode does. And C. You can run a couple of the MOSFETs in series to further share the load, so each one gets less hot than one massive heat sunk diode, if that makes sense. And I appreciate the super chat. Yeah, man. I'd love for you to come visit me. I'd visit you, but man, that's a long ass flight. Actually, I would love to go to Australia. I would love to go to Australia. I'm not sure I want to go mudding with you and your redneck mates, but I'd love to meet you up at Sydney Harbor somewhere. Emu Plains. Hofner filed for bankruptcy. Well, they've been on life support for a while, as far as I know. I mean, I don't follow the industry, but it doesn't take a clairvoyant to see that Hofner's been getting by on the Paul McCartney connection for decades. Yeah, Wes, I'm seeing what you're saying about the land grab, and I agree with you, but I don't think there are times and places. However, speaking of such things, y'all enjoy those Vanity Fair photos? I can't even do it. Here, let's see. That Vanity Fair spread was pretty awesome. Hey, I can't even begin to get through your name without any capitalization, but hey, thank you very much. Are any advice or easy mods you recommend for 68 custom Pro Reverb to tame its mid-boosted nature a bit and improve reliability? Well, thank you very much. I don't remember much about that model. I've only had one of them in. It was a pretty good amp. If the only thing that I don't remember what the value resistor they use for the mids resistor. If it's anything larger than 6.8K, change that to 6.8K. That'd be between lug 1 of the base pot and ground. But yeah, it's a pretty good amp. It's not a bad choice. Before you do anything else, Make sure that the mids resistor is 618K. You can measure that in circuit with the amp off. Make sure you have the right speaker for you. I'm not sure what speaker yours has. Yeah, that Vanity Fair photographer, I think it's Christopher Anderson. I've seen people say, "What? He's a terrible photographer." No, no, he is so damn good. No one can accidentally take photos that bad. Every one of them was beautifully intentional. I mean, just using the art as the weapon it should be. The best thing about that is that asshole, absolute. There aren't words suitable for the man that I can use in public. Stephen Miller told the photographer, had the audacity to tell the photographer, as a photographer, you have a lot of responsibility because you should choose to be kind to people. And the photographer, to his credit, said, "So do you." And I don't think that will land with the guy because that's only for humans to understand. Well, it's not slam Republicans. It's not all Republicans. It's the specific. It's specific people taking advantage of Republicans. Thank you very much for the para-character punching the air with fist and bump written on his knuckles. Appreciate that. Let's see. Almost caught up to where I was on the last break. How hot should a 70s 100-watt Twin Reverb chassis get under normal use? It's going to be frying pan hot after a couple hours. Is it literally getting frying pan hot as in you touch the metal and you get burned and seared? Or is it just getting uncomfortable? And is it getting uncomfortable across the entire chassis? Or just over by the jewel? Or is it on the back? If it's just getting uncomfortably hot to touch on the back by the power switch, nothing to worry about. If the front panel is getting literally too hot to touch, let alone searing hot, then something's off. But they do get very hot. It's got 4 6L6s, which generate an awful lot of heat. The heat rises, gets trapped in there, and it warms up the power transformers. Not that the power transformer is running hot. Usually, is that the power transformer is just absorbing the radiant heat, and after several hours, it all spreads in the chassis. The chassis can only sink so much of that. Under rare circumstances, the transformer is running hot. It cannot provide the power, and it will begin to even get hotter. That's really rare. The transformers used, even like the 79s, the 80s, which are not that great, had high quality transformers. But if it's just back by the power switch and you're running it for a couple hours before it gets that hot, that's pretty normal. And then 4 6L6s get blazing hot. Make sure they're biased correctly because they can run excessively hot if they're not. And if worse comes to worse, put a little fan on them from time to time. Hey, Working Play 53. Yeah, I've got the K line right there. I love it. I've never told whether you got a website for more info or ordering a guitar because I don't follow the website. But as far as I know, all that information is on there. You can just call Chris. He'll be glad to talk to you on the phone. He's a real nice guy. I'm sure he answers the emails, but I think they have some kind of information on the website for that kind of stuff. I just glanced at it to make sure I wasn't going to be putting any misinformation when I did the initial review video. I thought, this was a year ago today, almost, that I picked up that guitar from. I thought I was going to bring it home, play it for a month, do a review, and then send it back to the guy. I had no intentions of buying that guitar. And then after a month, I'm like, I have no intentions of sending that guitar anywhere else. So that's my review. And I was not given the guitar, none of that stuff that other channels do. I bought it. More fool me. I need to remove that off the Extreme. Let's see. What is the tonal difference between the normal and vibrato channels on the AB763 Twin Reverb? Well, besides the fact that the vibrato channel has reverb and vibrato, the other difference is that the vibrato channel has got an additional gain stage, though the gain is somewhat limited. It's not like massively louder, but it is got another gain stage, so its harmonic generation is different. It has a different character, and because of the way the mixer is done between the dry and the reverb, there's a 10 picofarad bright cap across a 3.3 meg resistor, and that adds a little bit of air to the sound. So the vibrato channel's got a little more sparkle to it, just a little more openness to it than the normal channel. Not that the normal channel is going to be dark or congested. It's just a slight difference. And there's a little more grit at comparable volume settings and playing styles to the vibrato channel than the normal channel. It's not just on the Super Reverb, not just on the Twin Reverb, that's on all the Fender amps which have a normal and a vibrato channel. I like both channels for different things. Now, there are some other amps, like, say, the Super Reverb, where the difference is also that there's a fixed 6.8K resistor on the mids on the normal channel, but there's a mids pot on the vibrato channel. And that alone makes a big difference, because the mids pot at 5 is about half the mids of the fixed mids on the normal channel. If you want to make the vibrato channel of a Super Reverb sound more like the normal channel, you need to turn the mids up to about 7.5 or 8, if that makes sense. So it's a lot more scooped on the vibrato channel than the normal channel on a Super Reverb. Same's true for a deluxe reverb. Do I know how to fix a back bow from the nut to 4th fret of a Strat Vintage reissue? Thanks again. Ooh, that's a tough area to do anything there. I would think might be a bad neck at that point, because that's really not what a truss rod is supposed to do. The truss rod is supposed to control the whole thing, though it kind of gives up on a Strat at about the 16th or 17th fret. But the 4th through the nut, that's not really a place that a backbone, I said a truss rod can do the whole thing. I said back because Brad says you need to back that truss rod off. It's possible you got a twist in the neck that the truss rod is exacerbating. But I think you need to take it to a tech, a really good tech, and they can look at it and see if this is something they can deal with, or whether you just got a bad neck. Because sometimes wood is bad and it twists, and short of I don't know whether you got a rosewood, you can reshape the neck a little bit, the fretboard, to get humps out and stuff. But that seems like a tough place to have a back bow. It's usually going to be a bump either in the middle of the neck, say from the 6th fret to the 14th fret. That's what the truss rod's really there to do. Or from the 16th fret up, because that's where it's clamped to the body, and the truss rod can't really move that area of the neck. So right there where the 16th fret is, and this is all clamped to the body, and then it goes off this direction, it kind of fulcrums around that point. So that's another place where they'll often follow the frets down to offset the ramping. But down there at the fret, at the 4th fret to nut, you may just have a bum neck. Might have been made with wet wood. I don't know. Take it to a really good tech and see what they think. Because they can take measurements, and I'm just reading about it. What's my opinion on 1 ohm shunt resistors for measuring the current on the cathodes for a Marshall Super Bass? Totally unnecessary for a tech. Very useful for an experienced user. Most people, even a user, has no business measuring that or any indication what that means. A lot of amps will have that, and they'll have externally mounted points where you can measure that, but they don't tell you what the plate voltage is. So if you don't know what the plate voltage is, that current measurement by itself is not that useful. Now, if a manufacturer is very consistent, they know that, hey, assuming good tubes, that plate voltage is always going to be between 415 and 430 volts, then we can just tell people to aim for 30 to 35 milliamps there. Millivolts was what the meter would measure, and they're going to be close enough. And that's what a lot of manufacturers, good ones, do. But the techs that I know don't use that at all, and I don't like that because it throws off everything else. Because it only gives you the plate and screen current draw, not just the plate draw. I just get it across the output transformer, and so does Brad. But that's also a dangerous way to do it that I don't put on the channel because I don't want someone to copy what they think I'm doing. But all that said, if you have the 1 ohm cathodes and they're 1 or 2 watts or higher, and they're properly installed, and the manufacturer said make sure this is no more than this or no less than this, it's totally safe, won't hurt a thing. So it's a fine thing to have, but I think it's much ballyhooed. Can use the store-made Y cable to connect 2 1x12 cabinets to an expected cab splitter box like the radial cab link item. A 20 watt amp, I would get a box. I would get a small box and 3/4 inch jacks and wire them with 18 watt inside, just wire them with 18 watt wire so that the input goes to each output and you're done. And that's fine to split to 2 1x12 cabinets. As long as you match your impedance load, you'll be fine. You don't need to buy an expensive radial thing for that. Thanks, Mach J. Can I elaborate on the 800K dropout with CTS pots? What does it sound like and look like on ohm meter? It's not 800K, it's 8 o'clock. Sorry, I just splashed myself with coffee. All right, well here. Let's use this as an example. Now this is not going to be 8 o'clock because this is a Fender and it's got the 1 through 10 like that with the line up here. But in a perfect world, when it's down here on 1, it'd be off, and then you turn it up to just below 2, you begin to hear the sound, it'd be quiet, and it just gets gradually louder as you turn it up. And you know, maybe your stage volume is just beneath 4, maybe your stage volume is 4.5, maybe you're a banger, you're going to go out and play really hard, you're going to be on 6. Anyway, if this were a typical CTS 1 meg audio taper pot, it would go from nothing, 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 loud. The same volume, I mean, in fairness, it'd be the same volume as if this went from nothing to a little quiet to getting louder to getting here. So basically you're just losing everything from, on a Fender, from 3 to 1 is nothing on those CTS pots, and you don't have access to that quiet range that this will do on 2. So with the CTS J taper pot, which is not shared with the switch pots, they're not sharing the track with the switch pots, so the track actually has a good, useful full taper, then you have the ability to play this on 2. And on the reissues that Fender makes, they use J taper for the volumes, and they use J taper for the treble, just like they did back in 1964, 65. So that's very nice that Fender's doing that in the reissues. So that's all I mean is that you don't want to have it go from nothing, 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 nothing to, oh, that's almost gig level. Because you know, a lot of people will gig with this 65 reissue deluxe reverb on 3.5. That's pretty loud for some stages. And so if you don't have any ability to go 2.5, 2, just below 2, you can't really use it at home reliably. It's pretty loud. Let me grab my demonstration 65 reissue. Well, yeah, because the all the knobs and pots are off of the demonstration 59 basement right now, but you can see it also shows all the worst of that rust, and a lot of stuff inside is off too. I love the smell of WD-40 in the morning. Where were we? If it's Brad's job to solve the world's problems, then Brad is fired. Hey, Nature TV. What do I measure or check when determining if a power transformer is dead in old Princeton's? Is the GeoFX article a good place to start? Any of the GeoFX articles are always a good place to start. R.G. Keen is a brilliant guy and has been a huge asset to everyone in the industry. So GeoFX stuff is always great. um, the first thing I would do if I had wanted to see if a power transformer is dead in old Princeton is I would disconnect the negative feedback. I would pull the output tubes, and I would measure resistance from each primary to the center tap on the primary side. And I would measure primary to primary, then primary to center tap to primary. And then I also measure, crucially, any of those to ground on the primary side with no tubes connected. I might even disconnect the grid so it takes the bias circuit out. I just want to make sure that there's no short to ground or on that side, and that it's roughly balanced. And I'm not measuring like 72 ohms and 3 ohms per side to center tap. That would tell me that there's a bad winding on one of those. Then I would do the same thing pretty much on the secondary to the common, which is tricky because you're only going to be measuring fractions. You're talking like 0.9 ohms to 1.7 ohms would be the range. It's a little bit tricky, but make sure you don't just get 0, 0, 0 or infinite, infinite, infinite. And if all that passes muster, then I would do the reverse voltage thing, like I'm sure what you're referring to with R.G. Keen on the GeoFX article. I would probably get my Variac and make sure I've got like 1 or 2 volts AC dialed up, and I would disconnect the secondary from the say this was in a deluxe reverb. I would disconnect the negative feedback connection, and I would disconnect anything else tied to that output transformer aside from the filter cap. I could leave this. I'd lift the center tap, lift the center tap connection to the amp, and I would lift the primaries. I'd isolate them, then I'd feed in the 2 volts to the secondary, 1 or 2 volts, and I'd measure the voltage present on the primaries. But it's really beyond the scope of the live stream to go more than that here, because there are other factors, and you have to know what voltage should you expect. Well, if it's X rated primary on the spec sheet, and then it should be this much voltage presence. Brad got there first. Did Brad already explain this stuff? Okay. Well, Brad's probably better at explaining this stuff than I am. He can also type it. He doesn't have to just gesture with his hands and try to remember things in real time. But yeah, the GFX is great. Hey, see you, Wes. I'm glad you're here, man. Enjoy the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Hey, Tim Payne. How do I change the 10 microfarad bias caps on a Marshall Super Bass? I'm having issues getting to the underside of the PCB. Also, what's your opinion on 1 ohm? Well, I already talked about the cathode resistors above, but you have if you need to change the bias caps, you have to lift the PCB. You're gonna have to figure out how to get to the PCB. If you can't safely get to the bottom of the PCB, take the amp to a tech. There's nothing else to do about it. But you probably have to. I'm not sure what the mechanical layout is inside a super bass reissue, because an old super bass you wouldn't have. Have you? Let me start this answer again. When I get a super bass in or a super lead in, and I've shown this in one of the last older 70s Marshalls videos I have on the channel, I remove all the knobs, I remove all the pots from the chassis, and I often will disconnect the white bias wire connection on the PCB at the turret, and I will often disconnect the yellow and black, and sometimes another yellow wire by the dropping resistors, so that I can lift the entire board up. That's probably what you're running into. You're probably running it. So I leave all the stuff connected on the tube side, but I separate the pots from the chassis, and I make sure that none of the wires going to the bottom of the board are tight, and then I can lift the whole thing up, flip it up. And then you just have to be very careful moving wires out of your way. I showed that not that long ago in some Marshall video. That's the way to do it. I think that's what you're asking. Let's see. Hey, working player. I heard that some Fender amps use Eminence labeled speakers. Would Eminence be good for both clean and dirty sounds? Yeah, a lot of Fenders in the 80s and 90s used Eminence speakers. They were just said made especially for Fender, but they were Eminence generics. They're just cheapest of the cheap. But Eminence makes also some really good speakers. Now, Eminence has not made any of my favorite speakers, and Eminence, I don't have the same pricing options on behalf of clients as I do with some other brands. And I don't like to use quick necks on speakers. I prefer to solder speakers, and for whatever reason, the coating that Eminence puts on the tabs on their terminals are very difficult to get to accept solder. It's not a matter of just tinning them. You've got to remove a protective coating on them. So I prefer not to use Eminence speakers, but it's just because I find other speakers sound as good and are easier to work with, and I can get them for clients at a better price. Now, the one Eminence speaker I really, really like is the Alessandro, the SCA64, whatever it is. That's a really good sounding, unique speaker. But I've played many of the other Eminences. The Texas Heat's a great speaker. For certain tastes, the Wizard's a great speaker. But yeah, and they've got a huge range. There's no issue from the quality, but I can't get the same pricing discount on behalf of my clients with them. I can get a pretty good discount though. And the Swamp Thing is a good one. I don't like the terminals though. I wish they would stop putting whatever that is on their terminals that make them almost only suitable for quick connects. I don't like the red, white, and blues, and I don't like the hemp cone one, the C-Rex, which makes me an outlier. But I think they are both very popular with people who have deluxe reverb reissues that still have the bright cap. But if you take out the bright cap, then those speakers are and the old Alnico Blue Eminences are fantastic, like Usual Thing says. All right, we are at the next top of the next hour, so we're gonna get to the next question. We'll come up to Elias Thury when we come back. We're going to do the next intermission, and I'll see you guys in another 7 minutes. We humans, as a species, are, I think as Brad would say, silly buggers. So we have this giant box. This entire box shipped this. Could be worse if this were from Mauser. This whole thing would be wrapped in like a pound of bubble wrap. So while I'm making fun of humans that way, I'll make fun of humans my own way in just a second. Let me get this open. How ye? I'm not sure how that's pronounced. My Mandarin is even worse than my French. How's maybe? I don't know. But oh wait, should be another one in here. I ordered two. Is there a second package in here? Ah, okay, cool. Two of these little packages in a great big box. That makes a little more sense. Anyway, it's a little shutter button, and my red one fell off in the snow last weekend. I could not find it, and I had this silver one, but the silver one's too shiny, so I'm gonna take the silver one off. Because it makes so much of a difference to everyone else in the world. Put my pretty red, jolly, candy-like button back on. Ah. Now all is well. Got my red button back. See? It makes a difference. To no one but me. So yes, we as a species are silly in all kinds of ways. That's one of the benign ways in which case we're silly. Though I think the huge quantity of cardboard used for that is not quite as benign in the long run. The jolly candy-like button. Getting a used 59 Bassman reissue on a killer deal from a family member sometime soon. That's very nice. An Altec speaker and deluxe reverb. Yeah, you can put an Altec in there. She would appreciate that good. I keep Nikki off the channel by and large because I don't want creeps to comment on her. I'm the only creep allowed to comment on her, but she's fun to be around. Oh, I think vintage 30s are matched with Fender pretty well. It's a certain kind of thing. Certainly did well for like Dan Huff, I think. Glad that worked out well for you. The JJs are not a bad choice at all for a lot of amps, and makes a big improvement over the stock tubes in most Voxes these days. Recording amps, including air, can plugins simulate that? I don't find that they do. And the most important thing is not just air. You can kind of approximate that. And I've had good luck with recording some modeling stuff, but you don't get the speaker and pickup interaction, and that's the crucial thing. Hey, Louis Diario. I don't have any experience with Rev amps yet. I've heard great things, but I have no personal experience, yay or nay. I hope that when I do, it'll just be yay. Speaking of such things, I have a hand-wired AC10 and a Headstrong amp coming in sometime in the next week or two. So I will have opinions on those soon. Until then, I do not. At what? Sorry, the thing. All right, here it goes. At what point about years are solid-state amp heads not worth repairing or recapping anything past a certain brand or year? It depends on a lot of factors. There's some PVs that use some optocouplers for switching, which have not been made in a long time. Other PVs from the same year which do not use those optocouplers are fine. There's some PVs from certain years that used a certain kind of op amp or a solid state package, which has not been made in 30 years. So getting your hands on replacements can be tricky. There are other PVs from the same year, which are very easily repaired. There are amps from the 80s, which you can repair for 30 cents. And there are amps such as the Gibson Lab series from the same decade, most of which is repairable, but God help you if you ever need to change anything involving the inductors, or if you need to change the chip used for the compressor, the limiter, because that has not been available in a really long time. And if you do find one, that's a lot of pins. You have to be really good at your technique, and it's easy to mess things up changing that stuff. So it's not really a year, other than I would say the very earliest solid state stuff, the stuff using germanium transistors, and avoid that stuff, because that stuff's a real money pit. Like if you have an old Vox from solid state, Thomas Organ era Vox, getting that thing working as designed can cost way, way too much money, because at the end of it, you'll spend thousands eventually getting it working, and then it'll just sound like a Vox solid state. It's not worth that. For that money, you could get 3 really nice sounding tube amps, or 4 or 5 really nice sounding solid state amps. Or you can take that Vox solid state head cab and put something in it. But I don't have a hard and fast year. It's not like solid state as an industry, it's not like the entire industry said, all right, 1983, we're going to start sucking. And then in 1992, we're going to get even worse or whatever, or get better or whatever. There's too many factors. Hey, Chris Sharp, I answered the M15 question earlier in the stream. Yeah, man. Marshall cabs are crazy expensive. That's what, about 1,800 US if it's 3K Australian? I don't recall off the top of my head which Bassman is the AA371. I'm sorry, there's so many variants on the Bassman as time went on. Any time that you've got a Fender which has the 2 nanofarad caps on the grids, I remove those and then de-spaghettify the whole thing. And I like taking out those snubber caps, and it sounds like it's probably, given that it's probably one of the 70s, I remove the wax from the board. I change the electrolytics. I decrease the length of wire and improve the lead dress throughout the amp, at which point I can remove any of the snubber caps off the grids and stuff. And basically, just say, all right, this is the stuff that was a mistake due to speed production. Let's take this back to 1965. And some things, like some of the ultralinear stuff, that's a cool sound. It's unique. I keep it. But, sometimes there'll be a 30-watt big cement resistor that's cracked. That can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes I'll have space to put in a chassis mount aluminum clad resistor of the same value, etc. Recommend a low-cost capacitor meter. I can't, Metal. I've got a cap meter. I think it's up in the attic in a box right now. I never found it that useful. ESR is just one part of the thing. And as far as measuring capacitance, my little $20 Chinese meters there measure capacitance just fine. You can see me measure the capacitance in that Fender video two or 3 weeks ago, where I'm like, hey, this cap's supposed to be 20 or 16 microfarad. It measures like a couple picofarad. Well, I don't remember what it was now. So the little Chinese meters that I use, and you can see the model number and the descriptions of my regular videos. They're like $23 on Amazon. Thizda or Thisbe. Thizda. I always want to say Thisbe because that's from Midsummer Night's Dream. They measure capacitance just fine. As far as ESR, I don't find that very useful for my bench. Can I recommend an EL34 quad for your 7/8 Marshall Super Bass? Yeah, it depends on a couple of factors. Given how expensive it is to and how high the voltage is in a super bass, I might suggest the JJ EL34L. It's gonna be a very rugged tube, and that's a cleaner amp than some, and it should handle all the response very well. I also quite like the Tube Store EL34s, and I like the Mullard reissue EL34s. But given the harsh conditions in super bass compared to some other stuff, other Marshall models which have typically lower plate voltages, I think the JJ EL34L might be a good choice. Whichever way you go, get from a good dealer with good matching and a good return policy, because they are glorified light bulbs, and anything that gets shipped can be dropped. So good to have that protection. I had a JC120, I had a Rat, and I had a heavy metal pedal. I was buzzing, man. I don't want to ever have that sound again. Of course, the chorus did cover some stuff. But I'll say an old Rat into a Blues Breaker reissue sounds awesome. If you keep the drive down and the level up, it's a really good sound. The Rat is a real sleeper pedal. Thanks, Usual Things, on the lovely camera. Let's see. Nice, Wes. Mom and Dad gave me for my 12th birthday an Olympus OM3, OM4. It was 1983. I don't remember the model number. And a 50 millimeter lens. I'm sure it was the kit lens that came with it. It was a really nice camera. I used that for a long time. The trouble is I couldn't afford film very often as a teenager and as a young adult. And there's always the delay between taking the photo and getting it developed. So my learning curve was very slow and gradual. Then my sister took a photography course in college, borrowed my camera, and she says it was stolen. I think she lost it and didn't want to admit it. So I was without that. Which, of course, now it's a very valuable camera, and I wish I had it. But I might buy a film camera later just to play around with. Though I really enjoy digital. I think digital, in a lot of ways, is at least as good. It really comes down to the glass. Hey Elias, finding I enjoyed the Vox thing, but the AC15C1 isn't quite right. Any suggestions for other things in the ballpark? If you don't like the AC15C1, you may not like the Vox thing. So I don't know what you mean by the ballpark. The AC15C1, even in stock form, is a pretty good representation of the Vox thing. Maybe the Vox thing that you hear in your head is not really a Vox. So in the comments now, put some band sounds that you really like the sounds of. And if I think you can't get it with the AC15, I'll tell you some other amps to look at. But the AC15C1 is pretty good version of the Vox thing, even with the greenback. Let's see. Everybody uses the Deluxe Reverb. Yeah, that's the whole thing. The Deluxe Reverb is one of the perfect amps. There is no one perfect amp, but for most people, Deluxe Reverb is one of the best amps out there. Even if it doesn't turn out to be your all-time favorite amp, I think anyone who's serious about playing guitar should have some time with the Deluxe Reverb. I also think that the AC15 and AC30 are on that short list of amps people should get to know, but it is trickier to get good sounds out of an AC any circuit than it is from a Deluxe Reverb. But once you figure out the tricks, man, does it sound nice. But you can't set the tone knobs on a Vox the way you do on a Fender or Marshall. You'll find the bad sounds there too. It is a tone circuit that, pardon me, is a tone stack that can easily be made to sound bad and is less intuitive. You can get people who build you a Deluxe Reverb in a head form. Trouble is, it's really tricky to do that with reverb in a head because the reverb tank needs to be a certain physical distance away from the power transformer. Otherwise, you have hum, and so it really doesn't hold up well to a head format. There's a reason the Bandmaster reverb head is this tall, as opposed to being this tall. Let's see. Trying to get to the next question. Hey, Jayden? Anyway, hello. Do I have an experience with Cornell and Victory amps? I have experience with Victory amps. I have no experience with Cornell amps, but a lot of players I really like have good experience with Cornell amps. I have played the Duchess and another Victory amp that was very, very similar to the Duchess, and they sounded good. I don't care for the lunchbox style because even if it's very difficult to change tubes, it's very easy to lose a screw. It's very easy for the screw to strip the sheet metal when you put it back together. So I'm not a huge fan of the lunchbox style, but they were really good sounding amps. And while potentially some repairs could be more expensive because of the way it's built and put together, the ones that I had to repair, I was able to do it without taking it all the way apart, though it would not always be the case. I think they've got some larger non-lunchbox styles as well. Now, the Cornell Romany 12, I have no experience with personally, and I don't even know that I know what it looks like. I hope it's not a lunchbox. I know that Paul, whose name escapes me right now, really good telly player. He's also I'm trying to remember if he's Scottish or English. I think he's English, Scottish. I can't think of his name right now, and I feel ashamed. I've featured him on this channel in the past. I think he's got a Romany 12, and he sounds quite good with it. But I've not heard that in a while. Sorry. Is it Paul Davids? No, Paul Davids is the Danish guy. Can't think of the guy's name now. I feel so embarrassed. Yeah, he's definitely Scottish. Let's see. Hey, Mike Heugel. UA Auxbox has renewed my love of 100 watt plus tube amps. There you go. It's nice to have the things and not go deaf. Yeah, Paul Stafford. Thanks, Lost Atlantis Records. Yeah, Paul Stafford. Great guy, great player. I think he's got the Romani 12. He sounds quite good with it. Um, um, I don't think the Oxbox sucks too much mojo. I think it. The ability to make music with a thing versus watch it gather dust because it's too loud to use is a pretty powerful thing. And as far as I know, the Oxbox is safe as long as you have the correct impedance match, which is pretty good at. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot Mr. Stafford's last name. I really enjoy his playing. And if you don't know Paul Stafford, go find him on YouTube. EU price for a 70s Twin is like 1,100 euro. Well, depends on how far in the 70s. No, you're welcome to follow up, sire. Um, uh, 65 reissue is a really good amp. It is a really good amp. It is not as good an amp. It cannot be made to be as good an amp as even a 70s Fender Twin reissue reverb can be. However, if you get a 65 reissue, even if it needs to be recapped, it's relatively small labor costs, low service costs. So you get a 76 Twin and it needs 400 to 500 euros worth of service and a whole bunch of tubes to be brought back to fighting shape. It can be very expensive at the end of it. But at the end of that, you have something that's going to be tonally equivalent to a 4,000, 5,000 euro two rock. So you get what you pay for, but at the same time, not all of us can pay to play at the highest end. So yeah, you get the 1,100 euro Twin, you put 400 euros into it, you have something that's equivalent in quality to a $4,000 euro two rock or whatever. But that still means you have to spend that 1,600 euros, and you may not have that, whereas you might be able to find the 65 reissue for 1,000 euro or 900 euro that works as is, and down the road, if you need to put 300 euros into it, you're still going to have less, and it's still quite good. You know, I have some very expensive guitars. This is an Eastman, not a Martin. This is a really good guitar. But this is an $1,100 guitar, not a $3,000 guitar. This camera is a 13-year-old Fujifilm that I got for about $420. It is not the new version of this line, which is $1,700, because I don't need to spend the $1,700 when for my photography right now, this $420 camera is doing everything I need to do. It is not my bottleneck to my process. We won't talk about what that Voigtlander lens costs, because my wife might watch this. But the lens costs more than the camera. But that's a whole separate thing. But yeah, so if you get the 70s Twin, know that you may need to spend almost as much again to get it really going, but at that point you'll have serious return on your investment and something you can rely on for years. If you're to do that, make sure you get one where everything is physically in good shape. The baffle is in good shape, because the baffle on a 70s Twin is glued and dadoed in, cannot be changed out as easily on a 60s Twin. And sometimes the grill cloth on a 70s Twin is a separate piece and gets warped, and it can be tricky to keep in place. And sometimes the speakers aren't that great. So it's not like a 70s Twin is always the best choice, but it has the potential to be a world-class amp. You might get lucky and find one for 1,100 euros, which is already perfect. It's just my life doesn't work that way. And hopefully yours does. Let's see. Let's see. Hey, in wind pattern. Getting ready to recap tone and filter caps on my 69 Fender Chat. Any words of advice on ideas on how to get to be quieter, or will the recap solve the noise issue? Already did the death cap. Well, there are a couple of things in a chat. First of all, it is a single-ended output section, which means that there is no common mode noise cancellation, no common mode cancellation in the output, so any hum will be heard. Second of all, it has typically unbalanced heaters, in which case, by which I mean one side of the heaters is connected to the heater center, the heater tap, one of the heater taps on the power transformer. The other side of each tube's heater connection is just at ground. So one of the things you can do, and hopefully the secondary is still there long enough to be used in your amp, is to disconnect the grounded side and run new wires from the primary, from the secondary, the heater secondary, both sides, and redo the heaters so that both sides of the heaters are used with an artificial center tap tied to the cathode of the 6V6, and that will give you the best heater option for a champ rather than having it be as is. It's not worth the investment to put a DC heater into a champ. Second of all, the can cap, the filter cap, is often faulty, and you just have all your grounds right there at the can cap. It would be better to replace that with discrete radial caps, so you can have the reservoir filter stage negative going to chassis with the HT center tap, and all the other filter cap grounds going either all to the area of the chassis by the input or go in sequence. So your screen and phase inverter are going to ground wherever your phase inverter is going to ground. It actually is not a phase inverter in that, but your last tube stage before the output section. The ground used by the cathode circuit of the 6V6, and then your preamp filter stage going to ground with the cathode of the first preamp stage. And then you need to make sure that you have the thing biased for modern wall voltage. And the 470 ohm bias resistor in a champ, it's often beneficial to replace that with the 680 or 720 or 820, depending on your wall voltage, so that you're biasing it about 100% dissipation rather than 130. And then make sure all your ground connections are clean and good and all your hardware is tight. You are green at the gills, but heading to electronics shop in an hour. Closed down due to dig any special items I should look for. I have no idea. I've never been to an electronics shop. Thank you for the super chat, and I hope you feel better. Let's see. Yeah, exactly what Gooden said here. He probably said it an hour ago, given the way I'm always behind on the chat. Thanks, Goody Guitars. See you, man. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, all that stuff. Talking about Brad's wood now. Makes him giggle. Let's see. Why are small pots frowned upon in guitars but not amps? Hey, Omelet Socks. Well, I frown upon them in amps as well, because the taper is usually not that great, and they're usually built to lower quality. I frown on them even more in guitars because a pot in a guitar gets turned more often. Will go through many more rotations in its life, and the smaller pots aren't rated for that much of a rotation. and they don't have the choice in tapers, as I mentioned, and you can't control the torque as well. So, and there's just how much cost savings is there to begin with? How much cost savings is justified? So, to be fair, though, PRS uses 16 millimeter pots in some of their guitars and 24 millimeter pots in some of their other guitars. And even the most expensive custom shop, what do they call it, bookcase tops, all that stuff, with the 24, the crappy pots and $10,000 guitars. So I don't know why they do it. Advice for enlarging the power tube socket holes in a 74 Twin Reverb to fit new Beltons with a step drill bit. Oh, you don't want to use a step drill bit for that. That's really difficult. You can get a Greenlee punch to do it, and it can be a little bit tricky to line it up so the center is where it needs to be, but it can be done. The better thing to do is to say, I'm not going to use Beltons on this. I'm going to find a socket which fits old Fenders already. And I've got one for you. Let me pull it up and I'll share it with you. Let's see. I have to remember to do the version you guys can get to. All right. Amplified parts. All right. So just 1 second. They've changed the website in the last week. All right. This is important information you guys need to know, so let me call this up. And what was I looking for? Sorry. All right. Yeah. All right. I'll share this with you guys in just a minute. I love Belton sockets. Belton sockets are fantastic. Should be used whenever possible, but in old Fender amps, Beltons often don't fit because they are wider. Larger in diameter, I should say. And I got to find the right top mount phenolic for you guys that fits in Fenders. And I'm about to order some. Because as you can see, the rectifier tube socket here is missing because it had whatever caused the power transformer to be replaced had burned in that area. And they had changed it to a bottom mounted versus a top mounted, and it was a crappy one. So I'm about to order a whole bunch more of these. I thought I had a whole bunch of these, but I'm out. I'm gonna put the link here. Just a second. Putting the link right now at the bottom. That is a phenolic top mount socket that almost exactly is like what was used in the original ones, and it fits perfectly. And that's what's going to go for the rectifier tube here, and I'll probably order like 20 of them, so I won't have to order any more for a while. Yeah, rust really does not hold up well to WD-40, and I'll let WD-40 sit on for about 20 minutes, and then wipe all that first layer off with a gentle paper towel, then reapplies a little bit of WD-40, and then I just went with my thumbnail, because my thumbnail will scratch through softened rust, but will not scratch metal in the slightest, and that rinse and repeat got most of the rust off. Can't get the pitting out, but it is much cleaner. It is much better looking, and I left a film of WD-40 down in all the pores of the metal, so it should be a long time before the rust comes back. Now, if Belton sockets don't fit Fenders precisely, they're larger in diameter, and it is I have done it, but it is really, really hard to use a step bit on a steel chassis when everything's already been populated. If you just have a bare chassis, you can clamp that down to a vise and tilt the whole thing up and make it work. But you've got to use a really big bit, and there's so much vibration, and it's just really hard to clamp a populated chassis in a completed amp to that. So it's not the way to do it. If you absolutely must, Greenleys are expensive but safe. Then you just gotta make a little rig to line it all up, but just use a different socket. Beltons aren't what Fender's originally had anyway. What I just put the link to is what much closer to what Fender originally used. It's like $3 something, under $4. All right, well, need to wrap up. Let me make sure I'm closer to the end. Everyone's talking while I was on my last break, so we're not too far behind. And yeah, exactly. Amps that don't have a power transformer, don't touch. A, they'll kill you. B, they were made to be extremely cheap, so there's no point making them safe, because then you have a safe bad sounding amp. Doopy-doopy-doo. Why don't I run 50s, 60s drive-in intermission videos during my intermission? First of all, the joke would get very old for everyone. Second of all, I don't think anyone wants to hear that every time I go to take a leak. Third of all, I would have to remember to do that kind of thing and all that. And plus, I take 7-minute intermissions. 7 minutes is a lot of lobby music to listen to. If it weren't for all the copyright strike stuff, I could have all kinds of fun stuff for you to listen to, but I don't. What am I doing on Christmas? Will I play some guitar? Well, I'm gonna make dinner for the family. We're gonna do a English roast. I'm gonna do like a 3 or 4 rib crown standing rack rib and some mashed potatoes. I've got some Yukon Golds and I got some Reds, and I'm gonna do Yorkshire puddings. And I'm going to do some Danish cabbage for my mom and some Brussels sprouts. And mom is making an apple cake. And she's also making mince. I'll have a bite or two. I'm not a big fan of mince. And mom likes it. No one else in the family will eat it. And she always does very adult eggnog, which I'm looking forward to. And the night before Christmas, Christmas Eve, mom's going to come over to dinner with us, and I'm going to get like 24 tamales and some chips and some flan from a real good Mexican restaurant in town. So we're just going to have a tamale festival for Christmas Eve, then the full English roast thing for Christmas. The kids will be with us. It'll be good. Hopefully it'll be cool enough we can put a fire in the fireplace, because even mom wants a fire on Christmas, so I hope it's cool. Otherwise I'll be sweating to death. But that's my plans, and I might play guitar that night, and I might hopefully I'll be able to go for a photo walk. That's been something I've really enjoyed doing, just getting away from everyone else, just me, and seeing the world in different ways. Thanks, Oz. Appreciate that, man. Very kind of you. Hey, Los Atlantis. Pardon me. When first powering up a new tube project, not specifically guitar amp, what steps methodology would you suggest? First power up with tubes installed or not, etc. Power it up without tubes first. Power it up with some kind of current limiter. Bring it up, if you're new to this, bring it up on a variac and a current limiter. So if you turn it on and just barely give it like 3 volts and that current starts to swing, turn it off. You got something dreadfully wrong. You don't want it to find out because something burned. Make sure your fuses are correct. Make sure your safety ground is correct before you do anything else. Bring it up gradually on a variac, while keeping an eye on the current draw. If everything's looking good, then Then introduce the preamp tubes if it has them. Make sure all that works. You've got heater voltage at each socket. Set the bias as cool as possible. Put in the power tubes and fire it up. And again, watch that current meter the whole time. Be ready to switch it off in case you got your primaries or grids reversed and your negative feedback is kind of cause oscillation. And make sure you have a good load. Why do I think Fender never put reverb into their basements? Because they designed them for bass, and people typically have not used bass with reverb. But it's fine to use it with guitar, as I have promoted many times. I might have had an OM2. I don't remember if it was OM2 or 3 or 4. I think it was a 3, but I don't recall. It's been a long time ago. Used to go hiking with a Mamiya. Wow, nice camera to go hiking with. Hope you're going hiking in, someplace really cinematic. Because, you can call what Ansel Adams did hiking, I guess, if you want to. I don't have any experience with the Laney 15C, but let's see if I can help you anyway in my shaft. The gain knob is super scratchy for a few minutes after turning the amp on. Is this normal? Should I replace tubes or something else? Or if it's just scratchy for a few minutes, that means you've got some DC building up the grid of whatever tube stage is right after the gain pot. That could be a bad tube, a preamp tube, or it could be that you have a bad component that begins to behave better as it gets warm. But I suspect you probably have a bad preamp tube that's leaking voltage to its grid until the bias stabilizes and the tube comes up to temperature, in which case swap preamp tubes. The gain knob is going to be scratchy when there's voltage present on it, and that's probably coming from the tube side, not from the feeding side. Better than the greenback and AC15C1? Well, the most appropriate one for the Vox thing is the blue Celestian Alnica blue that the AC15C1X comes with. But the green's a good sound. Look up on my channel a video called Tone Hang with Steve. My buddy Steve Selvage plays his AC15C1 that I did a few tweaks on with a greenback. Straight in with my 335, and he gets a wide range of really good sounds. Is it sound exactly like the blue? No, but the one with the blue doesn't sound exactly like the greenback. It's its own thing. It sounds like a little bitty Marshall Plexi. It sounds awesome. I've not worked on any of the old rack format groove tubes. Sorry, Greg. I have. I will specifically say, do not waste any of your money on any version of a Hot Rod Deluxe. Doesn't matter if it's the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 17, the red ones, the blue ones. None of them are ripe yet. They're all garbage amps. Especially as expensive as it is to get stuff into Hawaii. Look at my channel. I've got a whole bunch of amps about hot rods, blues, DeVilles, all those things. They're junk. They're junk. They should never have been sold. It's insulting that Fender keeps putting that stuff out and never fixing the core problems. Any other company that came out with that amp would have gone out of business with that amp. But people don't, they see the logo and they go, auga, auga, but it's bad. Usual things. Come on, man. That's not why you're a dick. The blues are the most important part. One of the absolute most important parts of an amp. Whether it works or not is also important. Whether it produces sound at all is very important. But and the blues can blow an AC30. They're right up on the edge of what they're capable of handling. But that does not mean that the AC30 sounds bad with other speakers. It just sounds its most iconic with the blues. Let's see, trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Hey, AP, I prefer phosphor. I tried 80/20 and I turn them, they go black after I touch them and my hands go black instantly. And I don't find the difference to be that amazing, though. Maybe I'm not the person you should listen to. These are 6 month old D'Addario XS coated phosphors, and they still sound like I put them on about a week ago. So, I'm impressed with those things. But if I were recording in a studio, if it was just going to be for an album, I put on some fresh phosphors and 2 days before I was going to do the take, if I could. I've been very pleased with the black and blue Alnico that WGS makes, though it does sound like it's a bit of a mixed and mastered version of the Vox sound versus what the blue sounds like raw in the room. It's got a little shimmer to it, but I quite like it. I also like how much less they cost. Let's see. I used to shoot with film. Might shoot with film again, but it's a very expensive proposition. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Um, I've learned so much faster with digital because I can see the things I'm doing right. I can see the things I'm doing wrong in such a much faster time frame. Versus, it's not like I ever had a dark lab at home. It's not like I could find out 6 hours later what I got that day. It would be at the minimum the next day before I would even see a contact sheet. So much faster process to learn and develop as a photographer with digital. Like I came back with like 700 photos from this past weekend. I came back with like almost 1,500 photos from New Orleans. If I had, and not all of them came out, that I would have spent thousands in film. It was digital's free once you buy the camera. Need to fix reverb noise in a Fender concert amp, not a Rivera one, sadly. What have I ever done? I've got some concerts. There's a Fender concert from the early 80s that had a weird issue with the reverb circuit. And it was very noisy, both in the reverb driver and the reverb recovery stage. It's right before Rivera, but there's a service note on that. I don't think I have a video on that on the channel. But if you were to contact any Fender authorized service center that's been doing this for a while, they should have the note on that model. And it's something where the Fender is like, you change this 82K to a 57K and change this other thing. I don't remember what it is, but they have a specific fix. And that does fix the Fender concert reverb issue from the early 80s, before the Rivera. And never be sad that you don't have a Rivera era Fender amp. The Rivera era, which is hard to say, is not very good. Nothing against Bill Rivera. It's against how Fender implemented his designs in production. Hey Lars, there's almost no difference there's no difference in the circuit between a 2204 and 2203 until you get to the output tubes. If one sounds thin and the other one doesn't, you may have some other issue, but without having your amp in front of me, I can't tell you what it is. But the preamp voicing is exactly the same between the two amps. One thing you could check, Marshall did not always wire the negative feedback correctly. The negative feedback should be tied specifically to one of the three output transformer secondary taps, 4, 16, or 8. with the corresponding value resistor. For instance, if you have the 4, it's often a 22K. If you have the 8, it's often a 47K. If you have the 16, it's often 100K. Sometimes they'll fudge that and they'll have 47K on a 16, whatever. But on some Marshalls from the factory, they connect the negative feedback to the common of the impedance selector switch, which means that depending on you would have different amounts of negative feedback depending on which load you're on, which meant that you could have the negative feedback incorrect in amp A versus amp B would be working as designed, and you never quite like the sound of amp A and you're not quite sure why. It can be just as simple as moving the wire to the correct secondary tap. But like I said, unless I had your amp in front of me, I couldn't tell you more. Sorry. All right, we're going to try to wrap this up. I'm going to make sure any other super chats get answered or just replied to. Like, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. It's appreciated. To anyone whose questions I did not get to, I apologize. I have tried, but sometimes I'm just too damn popular for my own good. Thank you, Richard. That's very kind of you. Any others I need to address before we wrap this up? And I see some questions that I've missed. I apologize. We'll have to do this again sometime before next year, because we're about to be in that stretch where everyone is off and all that fun stuff, and I'll still be here, so I'll still be working. And I don't remember the blizzard of '78, and I'm glad to say that. I remember the hurricane of '78, not a tornado of '78, though. But most of you can't say that. Anyway, I hope you all have a good holidays, no matter your inclinations and your traditions. I hope you're all safe. I hope you're all well. The world is crazy. We don't have to be, at least not in the bad ways. Rob, thank you very much. Good to see everyone. I don't know. Keep your chins up. I'm working on it. See you guys.